as we look at the Gospel of John, John's not the one that's full of necessarily all the healings. And he doesn't focus on a ton of miracles. But the one that John puts in here, the different ones, are for a definite reason. A lot of them are ones that were not included in the other Gospels. Lazarus rising from the dead. Why didn't the other ones include that one? You'd think that kind of be at the top of the charts. This man being blind and seeing. Some have given some reference, but very short. When I was trying to come up with what I wanted to talk about, as I thought about miracles, there was just too many. There's no way I could just pinpoint it down to one. And then I thought, if you look at the Friday Bulletin, I thought of a comedian that I absolutely love. How many people here know Bill Engvall? From Blue Collar Comedy Tour, or Jeff Foxworthy. You might be a redneck yet. Well, Bill Engvall's catchphrase is, here's your sign. If you ask stupid questions, you're going to get a stupid answer. Here's your sign. So you should just wear it. And as I was reading this last night, at about 1 o'clock in the morning, I just kept seeing that over and over. The Pharisees kept wanting a sign. They kept wanting something. Even though they kept getting the answer over and over and over, they could not accept it because it did not come in the package that they were looking for. And at the end, the blind man basically said, here's your sign. After they had asked him over and over, how is it that you see? How many times did he have to explain to them in detail exactly what happened before they would believe it? They weren't going to believe it. Well, as you look throughout John, that's basically what's going on with all the miracles. Everybody's wanting signs and wonders. We talked in Bible study about a couple other healings that had happened with an official's son. Water turning to wine. The leper. They were all things that they wanted Jesus to do something. They wanted a sign. The official wanted him to go to his house to heal his daughter. And Jesus refused. The centurion came to him, did not ask him to go, but said, just say the word. Just say the word. Most of these healings did not come about from Jesus doing anything. He said the word with Lazarus. What did he say? Lazarus, come out! He didn't go in and lay hands on him or do magic. He stood from afar and spoke the words. And the miracles happened. With the official's daughter, they were pushing him to go, to do. Why? Because they wanted signs and wonders. The Jews were wanting entertainment, right? They wanted to see a good show. Do this for us, and then we'll believe. And time again, the running theme is, Jesus looks at the people who said, we believe. Just speak it and it'll happen. And it was because of their faith that miracles did occur. It was because of the officials' faith. Jesus said, they will live. It was because of Mary and Martha's faith. When Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Do you believe? Yes, I believe. Lazarus, come out. And the dead man was raised. One of the interesting things with that story with Lazarus that we pointed out is it says he was dead for 4 days. Does anybody know why the 4-day thing? Because they called Jesus, they sent messenger to him when he was still sick, saying, come. Our brother is dying. He's ill. You need to come. And it says Jesus purposely waited. Now, he wasn't just in the next town. He had about a 2-day trek. And so he purposely waited 2 more days before he set out. Now, his disciples knew Lazarus was a very close friend, and they're kind of scratching their head going, why are you not jumping up and running to go heal your friend? And Jesus says that so God may be glorified. The reason for this was there was a superstition back then that said if you were dead for 3 days, Well, there's a chance you can still come back to life. But when you hit the 4-day mark, you were dead. I know, it's silly. But that was a superstition. And so Jesus was making a point, if he had rushed back there and brought him back to life on the 2nd or 3rd day, they go, well, he really wasn't dead anyway, he can still come back. But by the time it was the 4th day and he was stinking, they knew he was dead. And Jesus then does the miracle. See, he was outside of the box of what they looked at, how they wrapped everything in. With all of his healings, it wasn't what they thought it would be. This blind man, I love this story because we see so much. It starts with, well, who sinned? See, that was the other thought. If you had something wrong with you, either you sinned or your parents sinned and you were being punished. Jesus sets the record straight. This has been going on for thousands of years. That was a belief. And he goes, neither. That is not why he was blind. So he spits on the ground and he makes mud. And he puts it on his eyes. I want to just take a little sidebar right here because there's 2 other healings that I'm going to bring up that Jesus does with sight. With another one, he just touches his eyes and he can see. With yet another blind man, he puts mud packs on his eyes and he says, now go wash them off. And it's like scales that fall off of his eyes like Paul. And he says, I see, but men are like trees. So he washes his eyes again, and then he can see. Today we look at a blind man where he puts mud on his eyes and he tells him to go wash in a certain place, right? In a certain pool. And when he does, he immediately can see. His eyes aren't fuzzy or distorted like the second guy. You ever wonder about that? Why did God do different kinds of healings for each one? He could have just put his hand on every single one of them. See, 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 see. Or he could have just spoke the word. But it was different. Again, it didn't fit the package that everyone was looking for. Everyone was unique and different. This man, when he washed his eyes, he could see. The best part was, Jesus had another agenda on this. He healed him on the Sabbath. See, this was yet another rule that they come up with. And I kind of wrestled with that a little bit. Because the rule was you were supposed to keep the Sabbath holy. You really were not supposed to work on the Sabbath. And the Jews thought that they were just upholding the rules. But then Jesus comes along and he's doing all this good stuff on the Sabbath. He can't be from God. He's breaking all the rules. And the point that Jesus keeps trying to make with healing after healing after healing that takes place on the Sabbath is, what makes God's day holy? Is it sitting on your rear doing nothing? Or is it helping someone and glorifying God through it? That's exactly what keeping the Sabbath holy means. It means being in tune with God the Father all day long, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're going, no matter where he leads you. If he asks you to go help a neighbor and you're working on the Sabbath, but you are being the hands and feet of Christ, are you sinning? No. Jesus was constantly doing this. When the Pharisees come to him, they start beating him up on this. He says, my Father is always working. Think about that sentence right there. If you're coming from a legalistic standpoint, you do nothing on that day. And this man just tells you that God is always working, which means he's working on Sunday too. That's going to rock your world a little bit, isn't it? And then Jesus follows up with, and I am also always working, glorifying God. Well, we know that didn't sit well. I like this whole little banter, though, going on between the blind man and the Pharisees. How many times did he have to tell them? How many times did they want more of a sign? You go, what more of a sign do you want? I was blind, now I can see. Figure it out on your own. They didn't bring in his parents in on all this. They're going, here's a page, don't ask us. We don't want to get in trouble. Yeah, he was blind. We don't know how he can see. They're missing the whole point. They're all caught up in the rules and the laws that mean absolutely nothing. The point should have been, they should have all been glorifying God. Then how this man could see that he had been healed. He had been restored. He had been made whole. Guess what happens to Lazarus after he comes back to life? Guess what the Jews spent the whole time trying to do? To kill him. Let that settle for just a minute. Jesus brings a man back to life, and now these guys want to kill him. Because Jesus raised him. They were so intent on their own legalistic laws that they were missing the whole picture. The whole big picture. Sometimes we miss the whole big picture, even though God's giving us signs all along. We focus on those little physical healings, but if you really look at the scriptures, look at the other healings that take place. From the beginning, it was the water turned into wine. That was not a physical healing. It was a emotional and spiritual healing. He was helping out the couple. As he comes out, who does he encounter? The woman at the well. That was an emotional healing. That was a spiritual healing. Most of the miracles that take place at the beginning are to the Gentiles. That was a social healing, wasn't it? They were outcasts. Jesus was never even supposed to come in contact with them, touch them, let alone heal them. And yet it was mostly Samaritans and Gentiles that believed from the beginning. And didn't need a sign. They just begged him, say the word. And which Jesus did. How many times do we ask for signs? Are you really talking, God? If you are, then show me a sign. Or do this, or do that, and then I will believe. If you would just heal me of this, then I promise I'll go to church. Or how many people say, Lord, if you just get me out of this jam, or you just do this one thing, I promise I will turn my life around. I promise I'll go in the ministry. Well, no, wait a minute, maybe I won't go that far, but I promise I'll... All heard those barters back and forth. Do this, and then I will. And Jesus flips that completely around and says, have faith, and then it will. But it may not come in the way you were looking. It may not come in the way you were expecting. Quit putting God in a box and quit putting limits on him. Because we serve a limitless God, don't we? We serve a God who defies gravity. He walked on water. He turned water into wine. We serve a God who defies all of physical nature. He healed. He did things that by this earth standard could not be done. And we serve a God who resurrected not only his son, but others, just so we might believe. So if you're still looking for a sign, if you're still needing something to peg it on so that way you can believe, my question is, what's it going to take? What's it going to take for you to trust and have the faith that if God just speaks it, it will happen? As I thought about the sign thing and the Pharisees, it dawned on me that God did give them their sign. If you remember, as Jesus hung on that cross, between the two thieves, Pilate had sent Jesus to Herod, and what was it that Herod wanted? He says, show me a sign, dazzle me, give me wonders, and I'll let you go. And Jesus refused. So he sent him back to Pilate. Pilate knew that the Pharisees wanted him gone, and he was not their king. And so not in one, not in two, but in 3 languages, he had a sign nailed above that cross that said, King of the Jews. Here's your sign. Amen.